Oh, you're gonna check your connection. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to your Cannabis Equity Minutes with Cynthia Mompoint on this June 22nd, 2021 evening. And I am excited to continue our trek and just looking at how legalization is rolling out throughout this country, particularly here in Massachusetts, and looking at it through the lens of equity, right? Are we achieving this equitable participation, this corporate social justice measures, even the political social justice measures when we talk about constantly bring up the war on drugs? Are we moving the needle in that space? And starting to redress the harms from prohibition, the harms from the orchestrated war on drugs by our government through the efforts that we see happening in legalization. So, as always, we're going to tonight. It's going to be a little softer night than our last session. We're going to take a look at the data. That's part of the investigative work here, in terms of what I'm committed to bringing to the community is where are we on this, and what are we being told, and what does that mean? So we'll look at the data and then highlight anything that's happening on a national front, especially what states may have made some traction in terms of legalization in their space and what they're looking at to opening up, and then dig in a little bit more in Massachusetts. Look at what we have going on. What are the pressing issues, and what are the things that we need to be mindful of? Again, keeping this focus on equity and our efforts to achieve equitable participation. So on this note, with the Cannabis Control Commission here in Massachusetts, one of the things that the CCC has consistently said is that they provide open data, and they pride themselves on providing this information transparently. I use this in quotation, to the public. And what we see here is the data is not consistent. We have 250, according to our license tracker, 250 businesses operational, which is awesome. We're moving along in terms of opening up and having legal businesses. What the problem is we want to get a sense as from an equity lens, what does this mean and what does this look like? And so if you paid attention to the commission's last meeting, the update was that we had 10 equity business amongst that 250 that were operational. However, when you go back to the tracker to determine which 10 are these, the data actually shows it's only 7 licenses that are operational. So we want that information because we want to be able to really assess where are we when it comes to equity, where are we seeing participation and the movement happening. So we had 250 operational. Of those, 4 of them are economic empowerment certificate holders and 3 social equity program participants. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but one of the things that we are starting to see are the delivery licenses pick up now that they've opened that option. Now, we don't expect to see anyone operational yet, so we're not going to have that data for you, but we do see across the state in Massachusetts, the equity program participants are securing host community agreements, which is the first leg. Now we need to see, is that going to translate into business? And I've talked about this before. While on the one end, we want to celebrate these successes of our individuals who are able to open up, because that is no easy feat. The gauntlet here in Massachusetts is steep, being a highly regulated market. But when we look at this in totality as an equitable participation, from the equitable participation lens in Massachusetts, and what we're achieving, we're not looking to have equity folks pigeonholed into one license type, not when we have 9 license options. Actually more than 9, I think we're up to 11 the way they've parsed out the delivery operator licenses. So we'll touch on that in a moment. On a national front, one of the highlights that we touched upon before was Connecticut going legal. July 1st is going to be when folks will be able to possess small amounts of cannabis without any type of criminal charges attached to that. And I think if you have been tracking with us enough, you know that legalization in and of itself does not translate to the end to the war on drugs. It does not, and it's evidenced through the data we've shared in the past, and we're looking to see the information as it comes out in the future. But Every state that has gone legal continues to see an increase, despite it going legal recreationally, particularly, they continue to see an increase in the disparity of arrests for cannabis, whether it's for whatever the charges are, but the disparity rates continue to increase when you compare black and white people, black and white users, black and white, however they're participating with the plant, the rates increase. So to say that legalization is ending the war on drugs is a misconception. And we need to make sure that information is communicated clearly, because the public thinks that, oh, we're doing something about the war on drugs, it's going legal now. No, what we're doing is monetizing cannabis. Now the government can come in and tax it, and it's business as usual when we're talking about the status quo, white men being able to capitalize to the tunes of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars, and soon it's going to be billions, because the trajectory in the growth of this industry is exceeding what was originally projected. So here it is, we see that, and then we continue to see black and brown folks arrested for this plant. And the fact that it's in the details, right? Why is it that we have not decriminalized the plant altogether? Why is it that we're simply celebrating the fact that you can possess small amounts of cannabis? Well, what if you want to have more? What if you are a user who uses the plant, whether for whatever reason, and you're being limited, and if you have more, then you get charged. You get more severe charges, distribution charges. No longer are you looking at possession charges. So again, while we celebrate these small measures or highlight them, we don't lose sight of what equity will officially look like in this space. Louisiana has just declared that they're going to go legal with possession of small amounts of cannabis being legal August 1st of this year. And I think it's interesting because Louisiana, it was just a month ago or 2 months ago, we were talking about a gentleman in Louisiana who was put on death row for cannabis because it was his third strike, or excuse me, maybe it was life, not death row, life sentence. It doesn't matter what the sentence is. The fact that we're still having this conversation about people being arrested for cannabis, and then in the same vein, we're talking about the fact that black and brown folks can't even get in the industry on the legal side to participate and own businesses is disgusting, and it's abomination, and it's something that we have to keep we cannot be complacent to celebrate 1 or 2 or even 10 folks getting a license. We definitely celebrate it, but we can't be complacent. And our complacency will be the detriment to our legacy. When we look back 10, 20, 30 years ahead and we look back to now, this time period, and what we're doing to hold those in power accountable to ensuring that we were moving the needle in equity, that we were achieving equitable participation that will allow for generational wealth building, that we were pushing for measures that no longer undergird the law enforcement to continue and perpetuate the disparity in how they treat and engage with the public when it comes to cannabis, particularly black and brown folks. So all of that, we're going to be held accountable for that. So with that in mind, again, a lot of the things, the proposals, the solutions, and the opportunities that I highlight here on this show is with that outcome in mind, that we can actually look back and say that we did something and we're pushing and supporting something. Supporting policies, supporting programming, supporting decisions that are going to effectuate equity, right? So here we have Massachusetts, and I said I was going to loop back to the conversation around delivery. We had our Cannabis Control monthly meeting. They highlighted another delivery license operator. But what was interesting in this meeting, aside from a lot of the investigative work that we will touch on, it'll be outside of the Cannabis Equity Minutes. We'll highlight that as special reports. What I want to dig in more on is the things that we've been consistently looking at, such as the positive impact plans. And there were about 30 licensees that came up for review this time around. And it was a little disheartening to see the shift with the commissioners in terms of what they were looking at when the positive impact proposals were brought before them. In the past, we saw pushback, meaning the commission would say, okay, we will approve your provisional license on the condition that you go back and revise your positive impact plan. Now, in the spirit of transparency, the public was never made aware of how that impact plan was revised and how that business was able to secure the provisional license and move on to the final license. That's not made public to us. So we are trusting in good faith that the commission is sticking to what they said that they would do. However, when you look now, if that were the case, we would expect some update around the guidance for equity. Particularly, we see a lot of businesses putting out information, two things, one around hiring, but let me talk about the second one, which is donating money to certain organizations. Now, when you're impacting, you want to be, whatever industry you want to have a positive impact in the community. And I think as our society shifts to the age of information, we have more access to understanding what businesses are doing. We want to hold them to the fire for how they are supporting their local community. However, in this industry, and the purpose of why positive impact plans were proposed in our particular market by the regulatory body was a vehicle to address the war on drugs, address the harms for the war on drugs. So we want to see the positive impact plans having some connection to that. And so when we hear folks donating to veterans associations, and that is the only measure that they're taking to support their positive impact plan, that, and the commission does not push back at all, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable because it sends the message that, hey, you can throw your money to anything and we'll accept it. And it no longer places a premium or a priority on what the charge of the commission was, which was to promote equitable participation and to support the communities that have been harmed by the war on drugs. So I won't belabor the point in terms of the different associations, but the commission needs to demonstrate a level of consistency and transparency. I do have a solution. If you have followed anything that I've done, anything that I've shared, you know the solution in terms of holding businesses accountable in a structured and consistent manner for how they are positively impacting the community in this cannabis industry here in Massachusetts. The other piece I want to highlight with the positive impact plan is this concept that hiring folks from disproportionate impact communities, that is positively impacting, and that in and of itself suffices for positively impacting your or meeting your positive impact plan requirement. Now, one of the reasons why that isn't sufficient is because the equity program participants, particularly economic empowerment certificate holders, are required to do that. So to make it optional, so much so that people can pick and choose as to whether or not that's in their positive impact plan, is unacceptable. That's unacceptable. Secondly, I think there needs to be an understanding that needs to tie to the part of the diversity aspect of it, because this is something that the business or the entity is doing to bring into their company. Whereas when we talk about positive impact, we're looking outward facing with no direct benefit necessarily to the company itself, and the benefit is strictly for the recipients. That's how you're positively impacting the community. That's what the plan should really be focused on. And if the regulatory body has not looked at it in that way, then they need to go back and revisit it through the lens of equity. Because if not, we're never going to achieve equity. It's always going to be, well, how does this simply benefit my business? Which look, as a business owner, as someone who supports other businesses, who provides services to other businesses and how they can achieve equitable participation, I understand the need for businesses to have a win-win situation. That absolutely makes sense. But in the context of the positive impact plans and the role that the regulatory body plays, it's not fair to the community, and it's misguided direction to say that hiring from disproportionate impacted communities, that activity alone will suffice for a positive impact plan. You set the bar lower for the general applicants in comparison to economic empowerment applicants. That's one. And secondly, this should be folded into the diversity plan, and so businesses can really focus on positively impacting in a way that, one, is comparable across the state, and two, is going to help further the cause for equitable participation. And so what is the solution I've traditionally talked about, I continue to talk about? I push the PIES program. I promote the PIES program, not only because I designed it and I evaluated it and spent quite a bit of time researching other programs, not just here in Massachusetts, but across the country, to figure out where were the strengths, where were the weaknesses, and what opportunities do we have here in Massachusetts to really push something successful. That's not the only reason why I push the PIES program. I stand behind it, but it's for instances like this. When we're looking at businesses that are getting 3 licenses, they're getting, upwards of 10, 20, 30,000 square feet of cultivation. They're getting numerous retail licenses. They're getting product manufacturing licenses, vertical integration licenses in our adult use market. And then for them to turn around and say, for all 3 of these licenses, the plan they have is to donate $5,000, is to hold an educational seminar, is to help one person get an expungement on their record so that they can pursue a job. And then you look at some of these smaller businesses, you look at equity businesses, and they're coming out of the gate and saying, we're going to support an economic empowerment or a social equity program participant so that they can open up a business in this industry, whether it's a cannabis licensed business or an ancillary business. That disparity is unacceptable. And the PIES program provides a level of structure and accountability so that businesses do not enter into our market, take advantage of the Massachusetts residents, the revenue that they're able to generate without supporting Massachusetts in meeting its mandate, without supporting the community, without executing on the spirit and the policy around positive impact plans. And so that's why, you hear us talking about the PIES program, and it's something that can be adopted in other markets. What was unique about Massachusetts is that it doesn't require any new measures for the regulatory body to undertake. It doesn't require them seeking permission from the legislative body. It falls under the purview of what they already are doing, and it aligns with the mandate that we have, and you can tie it to an outcome. It just makes smart sense, right? It makes sense whatever goal and metric you put against it. And so when you take that structured approach to a positive impact plan, then you turn around and you look at what has been accepted across the board and where the pushback is. You have to ask yourself, well, do we as a state really want to see equity? Do we want to achieve equitable participation? Or are there folks who have a different agenda in mind where they'd like to push things optically before us that say, oh, we are strong proponents. You see, we've gone to the legislative body and we're waiting on them so that we can have money. And we've allowed folks to pursue this license. We've made it the delivery license. We've made that exclusive. We've also made the social consumption license exclusive, but we haven't made that available yet. And this is what I mean by optically, we want to push for equity, but we don't actually want to see that in the outcomes. You have to ask yourself that question. What is the goal? And at every juncture, that's the question we're going to ask when we look at this decision. Tomorrow, the Cannabis Advisory Board will be meeting. One of the subcommittees, if you recall, 2 months ago, I believe, Executive Director Collins told the community that they are going to push forward with 5 subcommittees. These 5 subcommittees would be responsible for different aspects on advising the commission on how they can do their work. Now, I have 2 comments on that. One, the PIES program was presented to the Cannabis Advisory Board, well received by the Market Research Advisory Board, so much so they brought it to the rest of the board and to the Cannabis Control Commission. The PIES program was well received by Chairman Hoffman. And what do I mean by well received? Well, well received, one, evidenced by the CAB, was that they presented it to the commission in their public meeting with the commission in August of 2020. And they aligned it with specific regulatory language that the commission could adopt so that we could see an increase in equitable participation measured through the outcome of business ownership. It was well received when it was presented. I presented it directly to Hoffman, and I asked for his feedback, and he said, well, it makes sense. Not everybody wants this. And, my response to him was, well, we open it up for those who do want it. At the time, our focus was economic empowerment certificate holders because that's the charge that they have. We have 123, and we only had 1 operational and 8 with provisional licenses. And so, we said to the Commissioner Hoffman, hey, look, we make it available to those who want it, because there are plenty of people who are sitting on the wings trying to figure out, how do I overcome these barriers in the industry? And there are entrepreneurs in your social equity program who are very much interested in this type of structure because they recognize the benefit that it would have for them to further the technical assistance that they were receiving from the social equity program, address the barriers that they have encountered with securing a property, securing a host community agreement, engaging with the local municipalities at a level that some of these municipalities that have extensive networks and trying to go through the various gauntlets just to get a host community agreement or just to be heard in and of itself, whereas some of these larger businesses have, or these existing operators, they've already demonstrated the capacity to achieve and overcome those barriers. They've already demonstrated the capacity to leverage the networks that they have to meet the requirements both at the local level and at the state level. And then again, tying to how it would allow the existing operators to benefit both on the community front, because from a corporate social responsibility stance, here it is, you are directly working with members who have been identified by the state as equity program participants. Secondly, you are meeting your requirements for renewal and being, and thirdly, you have the opportunity to be a leader, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country, because despite legalization existing in several states like the Californias and Illinois, they are still struggling with, well, how do we do this equity thing? How do we do this social equity thing? And so it positions our existing businesses that are looking to have structured positive impact to be leaders here in Massachusetts and across the country in this capacity. So that's my take on that. I think probably dig in it and perhaps give additional numbers around what we're looking at. But I would hope the commission would go back and revisit their guidance around the positive impact plans so that companies aren't able to have an out where they are garnering significant revenue or poised to garner significant revenue, and the level of impact does not align with what they're generating here in our industry. Because it's not, again, let's make it clear, when the company says they're donating $5,000, this is not monthly that they're donating $5,000. This is what they have said they're going to donate to meet that goal in 1 year. And we know a lot of these businesses are generating the number here in Massachusetts on average for the retail businesses is around $1.5 million a month. So I'll let you do your independent thinking and determine what would make sense if we have the charge that we have and the opportunity here to really create an industry that's not like any other industry and gets at the spirit of the law and the mandates that we have in place. So with that, I'm going to transition over to a little bit more on what's going on with the social equity program itself here in Massachusetts. So here it is. We have the third cohort is opening up. The application process was opened yesterday. And what does that mean? For those of you who don't know, if you are a Massachusetts resident and you live in an area of disproportionate impact, I believe the time frame is you've lived there for 5 years over the last 10 years, then you can qualify. And if you have been, if you have an arrest record tied to cannabis, then in both of these instances, you can potentially qualify for the social equity program. I'm not going to take the time to go into the details for that. One, you can get that information on the website. It would be make sense if you're going to go through the process of applying to be a part of this cohort, that you go there so that you can see exactly what is needed. What I want to highlight is the fact that, and I bring up this conversation of optics, particularly around this time, given the energy that people have with information around the celebration of Juneteenth and whether or not we are doing enough as a society when we look at the impact Black and brown people have dealt with ever since the Emancipation Proclamation, which was supposedly the end of slavery. And so I'm going to juxtapose this conversation. So here it is. The commission is celebrating the fact that they have opened up this cohort, the application process for the third cohort. And a lot of the folks in Massachusetts are excited, as they should be, to be able to participate in this program. Why some of the benefits of participating in this program is when you are able to open up your business, your application will be expedited in terms of how it's reviewed, and your fees will be waived for licensing at the state level. The state is pushing for local municipalities to implement their own equity programs. And then also moving forward, so long as you remain a social equity so long as you meet the requirements for ownership around your businesses, you will have discounted fees moving forward, particularly around the renewals. And for a lot of folks, that these benefits are quite appealing. There are also technical assistance benefits that are made available to social equity program participants in the form of classes, resources such as local relationships that the state has established with local universities to have access to different professionals for different reasons. Also, if you're looking to pursue a job or re-entry into the marketplace, the business, the workforce, re-entry into the workforce, these are all different supports that the state has committed to offering. I say all that to say, we have 500 people in our industry and in our equity program right now. And I started out with the data and I shared that there were only 10 businesses that were operational. Of the 500, we know at least half, if not more, have an interest in opening up a cannabis business in Massachusetts. And how do we know that? Well, the 123 economic empowerment certificate holders, that was the reason why they pursued the certificate, was to say, I want to be an operating cannabis business that is committed to economically empowering the communities. I've demonstrated this track record in the business sector or the nonprofit sector in other ways, and that's how they were able to secure that certificate. So there's 123 there, and then in the first cohort of the social equity program, there were approximately, I believe it was between 67 or 70 of those who said that they were interested in the entrepreneurial track, which was the social equity program. I didn't say this before. It offers 4 tracks, one of them being the entrepreneurial track, the other one being reentry, managerial program, and ancillary programs. So there were 70 that were committed there. So we have roughly 200 folks who said they want to be able to open up a cannabis business. and we have 10 that are operating. And so now we have the second cohort. The commission did not release the data on the second cohort. They have not only, we have consistently asked and said, when are they going to release the demographic data, but they also did not release the data on the interest and the track, meaning there are roughly 270 social equity program participants in the second cohort for the social equity program. And of those 270, how many are seeking the entrepreneurial track, meaning they want to open up a business, or versus how many are simply looking for workforce re-entry programming and support, versus those who may be looking for a job or a position in an existing cannabis business, but they want to be a career advancement, career growth. So particularly like a managerial position. So we don't know any of that data for the second cohort. And now, without having any information as to what the success has been in meeting the goals in terms of participation and moving these folks who have entered into the program into an outcome that says, hey, these were the ones who opened up. These are the ones who are able to secure a job, not only to secure a job, but they've been able to retain position. We don't have any of that data. They're opening up this third cohort. And they're opening up the third cohort, and we still have not addressed the barriers to entry for the existing cohort. So we've talked about capital. We still don't have an avenue for capital. Now, had we implemented the PIES program, perhaps we would have that structure. One of the outcomes that we had when we did the data analysis back in July of 2020 for the implementation of the PIES program was that we would see an increase in participation using the metric of how many equity program participants are business owners or are licensed to open up a cannabis business. We would see a growth from, at the time we were at about 4% to 18% in the span of about a year and a half. So we are embarking upon the year mark, and we would see the numbers moving far greater than they are now. And we did not. The commission chose to buck against that proposal as a whole. The commission, and I say they bucked against it for numerous reasons. One, they did not entertain it when it came down to the regulatory language that they drafted and approved. And then secondly, they sent me and my family a threat letter after that information was presented to them. So with that, they left our equity program participants vulnerable and with no avenue to address the barriers that still exist and are actually increasing. If you think about it, as we look at the general applicants, the commission has not publicized any of the data around which towns, which municipalities still have host community agreements, particularly where there are caps for various licenses. The information that they have on the website, where they consistently tell the community to go to with respect to licensing tracker around delivery, is not accurate, because what they're telling the municipalities is that you don't have to issue a host community agreement to a delivery operator. And you can go to certain municipalities, and that's what they'll tell you that the commission told them. Whereas when you look at the tracker, that the delivery tracker that they have online, you will look at a municipality, and I'll take, for example, Tingsboro or Somerville, where these are towns that have retail. It says, so are they a delivery town? And on the website, it says, yes, they are a delivery town. And what the commission has communicated, and this is not something this is what the municipalities are saying. The municipalities are saying that the commission told them. So this is almost like a he said three-way phone chain that we're going through right now. But why does it matter, and why is it valuable information? Well, we have to go to the municipalities to get our host community agreements, and they're pushing back and saying, we don't have to give you a delivery host community agreement. And we turn around and say, well, on the commission's website, it says, yes, you are open for delivery. And the municipality's response is, yes, a business can deliver within our borders, but we're not issuing any delivery licenses. And I think it's important for the commission to capture that information more accurately so that the public is aware. We're not saying that there are 356 municipalities where our equity program participants can potentially pursue a delivery license. There isn't even 175 of them, because there are roughly about 170 that have a ban in place for retail license, which means they have a ban in place for delivery license, issuing delivery licenses as well. Like the municipality would have to have a vote or go through whatever local bylaw process to communicate to the commission that they will allow for a delivery operator to secure a host community agreement and set up base in their town. But as it stands, that hasn't been the case. And we're looking at another, we don't know what the numbers that are saying that they're not going to allow for the delivery operators to open up. And the other piece I want to highlight here is they're not saying they're not going to open up. They're just saying they're not going to open up to delivery operators setting up shop right now. Why does that matter? Well, the exclusivity period for equity program participants has not been made indefinite. It's only for 3 years. And so if the commission, and one of the recommendations that we did give to the commission last year when they were putting these the delivery regulations together, we recommended to them, if you're going to do this low bar of 3-year exclusivity period, which some may argue that is not low, but this was something we were celebrating. We did not want to create a loophole, because this is how they dupe us in these equity programs, regardless of the industry. Is there'll be a loophole, and we did not want to create a loophole where a municipality at the local level can bypass the exclusivity period, and thereby, if they have ties perhaps to an entity that has deep pockets or well capitalized or well connected, and says, hey, don't allow delivery don't allow a business to open up a delivery business in your municipality. Wait out the 3 years, and then we'll be able to erect XYZ that will benefit, or that will do whatever the promise is. The point is, there's a loophole that's created. And in our recommendation to the commission is, if they weren't going to make the exclusivity license or the delivery license exclusive indefinitely or in perpetuity, meaning forever pretty much, then they should do it on a municipality basis. So on a case-by-case basis. So what does that mean? Whenever the city of Boston decides that they're going to issue their first host community agreement for a delivery license, and that license is operational, that's when the 3-year exclusivity period for that city begins. Whenever the city of Springfield or Worcester, or in this case, the example that I gave of Tingsboro or Cambridge, whenever any of these businesses decide that they were going to allow our delivery operator to set up base in their town, that's when the exclusivity period for that particular municipality would begin. That would bypass what we are setting ourselves up to see, which is after 3 years, then the rest of the municipalities will open up, larger operators will set up shop, and potentially it have a backlash and negative impact on existing equity operators, or even those who are looking to enter into the industry 3 years from now. So essentially, the 3-year window is going to begin this summer. The 3-year window, the way the state currently has it, and it doesn't matter what town you're in, that's when the 3-year window opens up. And so that's my piece on delivery. Again, we'll continue to track and how that rolls out, but let it be known, we have highlighted to the commission why it was important that they did not set it up like that, because it creates this loophole. And, again, we don't want to just look at equity program participants in delivery. We have equity program participants with vested interests in cultivation, in retail, in product manufacturing, in opening up labs, and the commission, and even medical treatment centers, right? And the commission has not made way to clear all of the barriers or significant barriers for that to happen. So as we open up for the third cohort to come in and enter into the social and participate in the social equity program, it's important that the commission make sure that they are taking bold, aggressive action, that we can actually do something for all of the program participants. Or again, we'll have to fall back on this is an optics. This is an optics gesture to say, hey, we opened up the program, we gave folks the information, because that's what a lot of the technical assistance is. And I have not gone into evaluating the social equity program technical assistance. The commission does collect that data in terms of feedback from the program participants. So it'd be interested to see if they will publish that, or are they just going to focus on saying, hey, we have 500 that applied and this third go around and we accepted 350 of them. And so now we have our social equity program with 700 folks and we still only have 25 people operational. Perhaps I'm projecting 25 considering factoring the delivery license. So with that, I am going to, I think that's everything. The CAB tomorrow, I said the research subcommittee has a meeting. It's something that will be publicized. You can go to the Cannabis Control Commission's webpage on their calendar at 10 a.m. To that point, they're going to be talking about what they're going to be researching. I'll chime in on that on Friday. I have a lot to say about this another gesture in terms of research. Research is important, but we can't stop there. And the commission has known for 3 years now that we've had certain barriers, and there were recommendations on how to address those barriers, and they haven't taken action on that. So to push more research, it's going to be interesting to see what that research is what they're going to charge the research subcommittee to dig into when it comes to the advisory board. On that note, I think we will wrap it up for the evening. I will thank you for those of you who continue to chime in and support and trek with us. Tune in on Friday. We'll have an update on everything that's been going on and what movement we're seeing through in this industry through the lens of equity. Have a good evening.